Hi, my name is Taylor, and I am a high prep dungeon master. Today on the Whispering GM. Prep, the foremost element of running a game that prevents a lot of people from trying to run a game. The classic dungeon master spends hours and hours of his own free time putting together maps, dungeons, creatures, factions, alliances, kingdoms, and all manner of other fantasy trappings in which the party can adventure. Entire systems and subsystems have been put together to assist with this process, modeling medieval demographics, modeling do I have my wallet? Yes, I do. Modeling medieval demographics or your preferred antiquity period in order to make a more believable setting. However, in the abundance of tools and the abundance of time, many referees will be overcome by the process. Some who feel it's too much will revert to module play, simply doing adventure after adventure and not really worrying about how they string together. Others will put too much in. They will spend so much time working on the setting and all of the trappings that go into it that they never get a chance to actually run the game. The accusation being failed novelist syndrome, creating a Tolkien tier 10,000 year history for a game that never even takes off. Why not just write your fantasy novel? With these hyperbole in place, we can understand that there's a wide split in the community at large between those who prep more and those who prep less. And as usual, there's a severe shortage of talking heads who prep just right. So, arguments aside, what is the answer? Well, some folks, including some folks I'm friends with, or internet friends, whatever that's worth, advocate for less prep. Less is more. Specifically, some extreme types advocate for zero prep. The argument is there is sufficient generation stuff. There are tables in the DMG, there are blog posts all over the ecosystem. There are tool and supplements that you can even buy, or tools, online tools that will run all of this stuff for you. You don't need to prep, let alone spend time world building. If you are hex crawling, even if you're limited to one book, the AD&D DMG has a table that will determine the terrain type for you with inputs based on what the previous terrain type was. Further, once you find an adventure site, the DMG has a secondary table to help you determine what's in it. Entire dungeons can be built one room at a time and populated one room at a time as you move through it with your party. With that in mind, why prep? You have all of the tools you need right in front of you. And in a frustrating way, the AD&D DMG usually has what you need. I say frustrating because it's almost always a deep percentile table. Gary, I want to roll the funny rocks, not just the same ones over and over. But I'm digressing. The point is, there are tools, generation tools, which you can use to, on the fly, come up with worlds, adventures, adventure sites, NPCs, characteristics for NPCs, and with the ever-present automation of technology, it doesn't even take that much time anymore. If you don't have a computer, then you can roll the dice on the table. If you do have a computer, bam, it'll roll the dice for you. No reason to prep in advance. I can't do that. Or I guess I have the books and I don't lack the skill to do that, but I guess I won't do that. And why? Well, think about it. You can generate landscapes, adventure sites, dungeons, towns, and NPCs, but you can't generate politics, faction interactions, interpersonal relationships, or any of the minutiae on which the subtleties of a campaign are built. Consider, I am rolling randomly for landscapes on my hex map, and all of a sudden there's a mountain to the north. I'm stealing this example from the Shadows over Sojinka. Forgive me, Stephen, if I'm mispronouncing that, I'm driving. But I'm stealing this from him on his Twitter handle. Have you seen a mountain in real life? They loom on the horizon. They're absolutely gigantic, even the small ones. So they will be on your periphery for days as you walk up to them. It doesn't make sense that all of a sudden we turn the corner and boom, cliff. So there's an implicit problem in verisimilitude. But more importantly, player skill. If I'm going to go to the mountains, I need cold weather gear, rappelling equipment, and ranged weaponry. If I'm going to the lowlands in the river country, I'm going to need boats, poles, extra provisions, maybe bribe a cleric to come along who can cure disease. If I'm going to the desert, I need different pack animals than if I'm going to the plains. So if you randomize terrain as you go, that means the party is not going to be able to ask around. It's not going to be able to check with the locals to identify what the appropriate gear to bring is, the appropriate kit to put on your hirelings, and truthfully, the number of hirelings to bring. If I'm going to a place that is likely to have hordes of enemies, I'm going to want a more heavy outfit. Or if I'm going to a place that's more open, maybe I can get away with being light and fast. But if I randomize as I go, this is zero prep, mind you, not low prep. If I randomize as I go, there is no way to tell what I'm supposed to bring. I have to go out on a foray, make those errors, and then go back, having planned better next time. And after having done so, I am limited to only benefiting from the knowledge of the place I have physically been. For that reason, your overmap should have at least a little bit in place before the players show up. Further, going into the dungeon, faction play and the reaction roll is one of the key things that keeps a party alive. Consider, I'll tell a quick story. A BX game I played in, we made friends with a group of Neanderthals, and we used that friendship to attack a lair of troglodytes. We came out rich, they came out food, and a couple people died, but there's no way on earth that the 5 of us were going to be able to get into that troglodyte lair without the Neanderthals. I absolutely could make friends with the Neanderthals. We absolutely could improvise and have them fight with troglodytes. But if you don't have the level mapped out, and you don't know where the factions are, you don't know where they live, you don't know the inroads and outroads, you can't identify where the neutral zones are going to be, you can't have sneak around opportunity, it again punishes a core central tenet of the game. The reaction roll is still useful in that you're not necessarily going to fight everything you see. However, it nerfs charisma in an extreme sense, because making friends is limited to the local encounter. Until I know what factions are present in the dungeon, I don't know in advance how my party may find themselves. If I bump into the troglodytes first, maybe they hate me more because we look like the Neanderthals. Who knows? That could have been in the mind of the DM that was running the game that I was in, but it's not going to be in the mind of the DM running a no prep game because he doesn't know the Neanderthals are there yet. Zero prep robs you of those situations. It robs you of faction opportunities. The last bit I'll mention before I walk into the store, the town. You can't have meaningful interpersonal relationships between non-player characters if you don't know who those non-player characters are. While it is a testament to the strength of generators and randomization that non-player characters will have random stats and there will become an emergent relationship between them, this character is a lecher. This character is chaste. How do they interact? Who knows? Let's find out. The town will suffer the same problem that the dungeon does, where the town is NPCs and the dungeon is factions. You won't be able to create those reactions. You won't be able to act on those emergent interpersonal relationships until those NPCs exist. With a zero prep game, those NPCs will exist only when the players ask for them. And an opportunity for those relationships is lost. Or at least delayed. So now that the dirty laundry is in the air, I'm not a proponent of zero prep. Does that mean I am over here writing my fantasy novel for the players to play through? Not anymore. I have fallen into that trap before, and it is a trap worth avoiding. I do a lot of prep. I like drawing dungeons, multi-level dungeons. I like drawing hex maps, world-spanning hex maps, but I temper that desire by trying to only stay 2 levels ahead of the party. In the original version of the game, Gary Gygax gives the advice that you should have a few levels of a dungeon prepared. Note, not the whole dungeon, but a few levels. In the same sense, one of my favorite references to make is from Chicago Wiz, where he advocated for the 3 hex campaign. Your campaign will not fill 3 hexes only, but that is all you need to start. A town, a dungeon, and a way to get there. When I was young and had infinite spare time, I spent entirely too much effort putting worlds together. Multiple different pantheons, occasionally rewriting them so as to explain how they interacted with each other and how they interwove with each other at the borders of their relative domains. Economic systems, political entities separated by geology or other forces, entire worlds with biomes based on desert bands, latitude and ocean current driven precipitation patterns, and the world in and of itself was very believable. But the party only adventured in one country. The oldest map that I have, I believe I posted a picture of it. I'll see if I can post a picture of it again. I found it recently in my garage. And the oldest map I still have, it is literally the size of Earth. The world is shaped in such a way that it accounts for the tapering circumference of various latitudes. That is, the 35th parallel is going to be a lot more mileage in terms of its net length around the globe than the 66th parallel, simply by virtue of how spheres work. But that being one of the most traveled maps in my campaign history, I only ran games in 2 of the areas. So what's in the other areas? I don't know. But hey, Whispers, didn't you just talk about how you can't come up with meaningful relationships and interactions between things you don't know exist? Yes, I did. And I still think that. That's why you don't want to go high prep, because you will spend years coming up with a believable history, an accurate to model climate, people whose history, trade networks, and interactions make sense, but you won't play the game. I hate to be a broken record, but prep is the enemy of play in the same sense that perfection is the enemy of good. If you get it to the table, then you are a leg above any campaign material that sits on a shelf and collects dust, or, in my case, sits in a hard drive waiting for failure to erase it. So, prep an amount that is appropriate to how much your party is going to adventure. This may take some time getting to know how your party adventures. If they're dungeon hounds, maybe you need a couple deep levels, a couple wide sub-levels to go with your main dungeon. If they are overland explorers, maybe you need stretches of territory and vague notes on peoples to make sense of it. If they are city crawlers, maybe you need Lankmar or your own Lankmar. But once you have that rhythm down, run with it, go with it. Build according to your table and stay 2 sessions ahead. A further note, if too little prep can lead to opportunity starvation, and too much prep can prevent your game from getting off the ground, what hope is there trying to find that middle ground? You'll find it. Play through. Try it. And don't let a talking head like me discourage you from running the game that you think you're best at. Now, one of the reasons that I run a high prep game is because I like prepping. I enjoy drawing dungeons. I enjoy coming up with those dynamics. I enjoy geography, understanding the interactions of biomes, and I enjoy researching historical dead cultures so as to steal ideas from them. Seminal author Robert E. Howard was known for doing extreme amounts of research into various ancient peoples prior to incorporating a version, often recognizable to the learned individual, of those cultures into Hyboria. He did this intentionally to create parallels between the past and the present. Similarly, you look at Gary's notes, he makes recommendations in supplemental literature for various tomes and encyclopedias, some of which are medieval. Most of them are focused on Iron Age Europe. He provides a historical context to the point, he provides such contexts that Grognardia actually had coined the term Gygaxian naturalism, which is I will butcher it, of course. You have read this, but it's the idea that Gary's world made sense. Things were in the dungeon and they had an ecosystem and it all fit together. I never met Gary, but it sounds to me like he liked this too. He enjoyed that kind of thing, and you don't have to. I will not fault you if you have a Dwarf Fortress generated map and then drop 5 or 6 TSR modules into it as you are inclined. But I like drawing dungeons, and forgive me if I've repeated myself, but prep is fun. Coming up with that kind of stuff is fun. And even if on occasion, when you don't know which side should win, and you can play it solo, do a solo battle. There are plenty of tools for that, and that will let the dice decide. Just because you are creating a setting doesn't mean that you are writing a fantasy novel. You are not creating your work of art. There's plenty of easy ways to let the dice decide. Use the random generation stuff that we were talking about from Zero Prep in your prep time. If I remember correctly, they're actually phrased as prep tools, and then iron it out. Yes, there's a mountain surprise over in the wilderness, but because you know it's there, you can tell them it's coming, and your party will know what to pack. Yes, you appendix aid all of the tunnels and warrens and denizens of your dungeon, but you know where those denizens are, and you can figure out how they would interact with each other. And you don't have to come up with a name for every kobold. Come up with just enough that makes sense, and then improvise the rest. Coming up with those interactions, setting a list of bullet points that the party is going to catch onto, and throwing hooks into the water to try to entice their interest, that's fun for me. And I would suspect that a lot of your friendly neighborhood high prep GMs operate the same way. Sometimes prep is fun. So there you have it. That's my 2 cents on prep and campaigns. Whether you prep more, whether you prep less, whether you prep all, whether you prep none, more power to you, because at the end of the day, what matters is that you bring whatever you've prepared to the table. Thank you for putting up with me, and delve on.
And that wraps up this episode of the Whispering GM podcast, an independently operated product released for educational and informative purposes under the Totally Steal This license. Some sound effects are retrieved from Mixkit.co and used under the Mixkit.co royalty-free music license. Others are retrieved from Pixabay, made available under the Creative Commons 0. Theme music is Raw Power, licensed through PlayOnLoot.com. Parties interested in or with questions regarding the podcast are encouraged to reach out via the methods provided on the Clearing Square Ring Mail blog. Thank you for listening, and delve on.